at 7 o'clock. So,
Pull that remark.
we'll call, we'll call the planning commission meeting of September 23rd to order. Cynthia, would you take the roll?
Sure. Planning Commission meeting is called to order on September 23rd, 2020 at 7:01 p.m. Chair Cornell,
Here.
Vice Chair Williams,
Here.
Commissioner Blakemore,
Here.
Commissioner Giblin, Commissioner, you still with us? I'll give you a moment. Commissioner Curley,
What do you say?
Bray,
Just pray.
I hear ya. Commissioner Reese,
Present.
we're gonna double back on Commissioner Giblin.
I'm here. Sorry about that.
That's okay. And then I'll check in with Commissioner Glasser. Do we have her here tonight? Nope, she was a maybe. She wasn't sure if she was going to be back in time. And Commissioner Herring. Doesn't sound like it yet. And Trustee Taylor will be joining us after the action item. That's a continuation of the rezone and lot line dissolution application. So he'll be joining us for the latter part of the meeting, the majority of the meeting. But we do have quorum as of now.
Okay, well then the first item on the agenda then is the approval of the minutes from August 26, 2020. Anybody have any changes, any amendments they want to make? If not, can I get a motion to approve the draft minutes of August 26th, the last meeting, 2020?
So moved.
I heard Jim first. I'll take Commissioner Reese on the motion and Commissioner Parte on the second. Was that right?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. And then on a roll call vote, we'll go through everybody. Vice Chair Williams,
Yes.
and Commissioner Reese,
Yes.
Commissioner Parte,
Yes.
Commissioner Giblin,
Yes.
Commissioner Blakemore, Commissioner Blakemore.
Is she here? Yes.
Yes, she is. Okay, great. And Chair Cornell,
Yes.
I'll just reach out once again. Commissioner Glasser or Commissioner Herring, if you've joined us. Doesn't sound like it.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Cynthia, I gotcha.
I did it. Thank you, Cynthia.
It wouldn't be a meeting without that, Roger. Thank you.
And do you know that we have a Miranda working at, so I'm in trouble. All right, is there any, and then is public, is there anybody on who wants to speak? No public on the here? Okay, if not, then we'll move on to action items. Is Karen there, our town?
Yes,
Administrator?
yes, I am. I sure am.
Karen, I know we spoke earlier about, staff reports, but because we have this one action item and then the subdivision where people, what we know are here that want to speak to it, I thought then that maybe we ought to just stay with the agenda items and we'll do the staff reports, at the end with the information.
Sure.
Okay, Karen? All right.
No, that's great. That's great.
Yeah, because these people are probably standing by and want to speak.
Sure. You were the one who thought maybe you'd move them up, but
Yeah,
staff is fine with just keeping them where they are.
so we don't have to go through and make motions on that. So
Sure.
we will move on to action items. Number 5 on the agenda, consideration of rezoning application with co-application for lot lines dissolution public hearing at East Fifth Street for Mary Huggins, trustee for the Margaret A. McMullen Trust. And we got the input saying that actually they would like to actually continue this in October. So is this Karen or Cynthia's item to at least speak to? And is Mary, are you Mary Huggins?
I don't see that she's joining us tonight. She had indicated via email that she needed additional time in order to provide those easement documents and to work out an agreement with her neighbor. And so she had sent us an email requesting continuation for the public hearing, and that's noted on screen right now. She wasn't able to get that stuff done, so she had requested that we continue the application again to October 28th to a date certain. We also received a letter from the neighbor who she was having the issue with. That's Julie Nania. And she had also supported continuing the application to October 28th. So the question before the commission is, do they want to continue this application to October 28th to a date certain in order to provide that additional time for her to get those additional materials to us so you can make that decision in October?
Okay. I only have one question. I probably mixed up, but let's confirm that the 28th, I wrote down the 24th. What is the fourth Wednesday of the month?
It's 28th.
The 28th. Okay, my bad.
No worries.
Yes, and we do.
It's a late one.
We do have in the packet a letter from her asking for that request. So, staff, that's all the documentation really need, that we can actually just make a motion to continue? Is that agreeable with everybody?
I believe that's adequate.
We're looking for the record that you confirm her request and do a motion to continue this in October, just so we have it in the minutes, and it doesn't look like there's a gap in her supposed to come back, and then the minutes would make it appear like she did it. So we're looking for the formal motion.
Is there room on the agenda for the 28th?
We'll make room.
Okay.
But currently, there's only one application for the 28th, right, Cynthia?
Okay.
Correct.
Perfect.
I make a motion that we move this request to the Planning Commission meeting of October 9th.
Sounds like Commissioner Reese with the motion.
And
Second.
And that sounds like Commissioner Parte with a second.
all right.
We'll take a roll call vote.
Cynthia,
Going down.
Cynthia, first, before you do that, I just make a statement that Randy just made, that we have the documentation and the letter from the applicant requesting the continuation to the 28th. So that would be in the minutes as Miranda wanted.
Excellent.
Okay, we can go with the vote.
Thanks, Chair. We'll start up at the top there. Commissioner Blakemore,
Yes.
Chair Cornell,
Yes.
Commissioner Giblin.
Yes.
We'll try again and see if Commissioner Glasser has been able to join us.
She has to abstain.
Oh, that's right. Thank you. I don't think she's actually on, but thanks for that reminder. Has Commissioner Herring joined us? Nope. So Commissioner Ray,
Yes.
Commissioner Reese,
Yes.
and Vice Chair Williams.
Yes.
Okie dokie. So we can bring in Trustee Taylor, will be joining us for these next items after he gets the message to come on in.
Okay. You can wait just a minute, but I guess he will just join us. There'll be plenty of discussion. So the next item then is we're down to 6, which would be the discussion items, the subdivision regulations, which we got a very nice draft of a complete subdivision. So we started this. I guess some people maybe more than a year ago, but certainly in the last year, because of lot line dissolution issues and some issues with the minor subdivision, we asked staff to take a look at all these things, and I think we actually got a very complete and looks like thorough subdivision, and pretty much going to rewrite Chapter 17. So. Jennifer Madsen, if you want to walk us through this, I'd be greatly appreciated.
You're muted.
Give you some brief background on subdivisions and municipalities' authority in regards to subdivisions. Colorado law provides that municipalities do have the authority to adopt subdivision regulations, and this power is given to planning commissions and the board of trustees. Subdivided land, this is just very basic, is defined as any parcel of land that's to be divided into 2 or more parcels, or is to be used for condominiums or parcels. Subdivision, it does not include parcels that are over 35 acres. I wanted to go over kind of principal public interests that are served in the subdivision process. First, the ultimate result of the process is that the recorded subdivision plat simplifies land transactions and title chains by allowing for the conveyance of land with reference to the recorded plat. So it makes it much easier to sell land because you're referring to lot 1, block 5 of such and such subdivision rather than meet and bounds descriptions. The second reason for the subdivision process is that it helps to ensure that each lot is offered for sale is appropriately sized and shaped for the intended use and has the appropriate access to public streets. The third reason is that the subdivision process helps to ensure that lots are offered for sale are arranged in a way that makes adequate provisions for infrastructure and utilities, such as the streets, storm drainage areas, water, sewer, power, all of those sorts of things. And then the fourth is that the layout of the lots and the streets and easements within the process are accommodate existing easements. So what you have before you is a draft of subdivision regulations for the town. The last time that subdivision regulations were adopted, or actually the first subdivision regulations that were adopted is 1983. There have been some minor changes to the regulations, but really they haven't been touched in large part for the last 40 years. And as Chair Cornell noticed or stated, there have been some areas where we've noticed that there are some holes in the existing subdivision regulations, such as lot line adjustments, and that there can be some streamlining of processes to make the process really match what the application is. So if you have a simple application that's in front of you, you should also have a simple process and not go through all of the steps that a major subdivision process goes through. The draft that you have before you tonight is fairly common for similar municipalities. It has different processes for the different applications. The new processes that are added are for plat amendments, plat vacations, lot line adjustments, and plat corrections. What is not included in this draft is site design standards. Those have been taken out, and not intentionally for any particular reason. But really, I think that the goal here tonight and for further discussion is, do you want to include site design standards? And if you do, what would you like to include? What would you like to include as a substance of those site design standards? So the absence of that section is not intended to be a recommendation against including site design standards. And one thing to note is that these are just this is a first stage in probably a long process. I'm assuming that we will come back before the Planning Commission to discuss these further, and then maybe a third time before the Planning Commission, and then they would need to go to the Board of Trustees for approval. So that's my opening introduction for these regulations. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Okay, you're on.
Okay, does, at this time for Jennifer, does anybody have any questions? And then I actually have some idea, which I spoke briefly with Karen this morning about how we may proceed in this. But maybe I should actually just put that forward first. Karen and I spoke, and we came up with two ideas. Number one would be that we could actually do a subcommittee. And a second alternative would be, about a year ago, we actually did quite a project with Steve, and I were on that committee with Cynthia, I believe, on the ADUs and the short-term rentals, STRs. And what we did is reviewed several parts of the code, and just as Jennifer has made flag notes off to the right, we could set this up where we could actually all review this in the next 3-4 weeks, whatever we want, time frame we want to put on it. We could all review this and put in our notes so that a month from now we can all come together, and there would be this comprehensive draft with everybody's input. That way that we can all see it. And I would suggest that we'd actually say, do something like in the next 3 weeks so that it's all completed, say a week before our next meeting, or whichever day we said we want to, which meeting we want to look at this, that we'd all have a chance to review these and follow up on it. So we could either do a subcommittee, or we could actually just do these flag notes, just as Jennifer has started out as an example of what we could do. And we did it a year ago, and actually it worked very well. But tonight, I actually, the first to go around, so I'll go back to the Planning Commission. Does anybody have questions of Jennifer? And then certainly, then let's go around and get everybody's input on
How to proceed.
on the draft and on how to proceed. So your initial thoughts. So first of all, any questions for Jennifer? Okay, if not, if we could just go around with thoughts of how we should proceed. So could I ask Karen Blakemore for your input, please?
I could go either way on having a subcommittee or having all of us review. I do have a couple ideas though, so if we do a subcommittee, I'd like to be on the subcommittee.
And that's good. The issue with the subcommittee is it would just be 2 people, because that's all we could have on the subcommittee. After that, we'd actually be holding meetings. So that I should have said that. So the subcommittee would be limited to 2 people.
And
Staff.
do other commissioners then provide input to the subcommittee?
They could do that, or we could do the flag, yes.
So we could still read this
We could still
document
do this with
and
the
then
subcommittee.
submit it to the subcommittee.
So I understand, Karen. Okay. Any further input, Karen?
No.
Okay. Billy Giblin, are you there?
Yeah, I like your idea of all of us, and reviewing it and like setting a deadline of like 3 weeks or whatever before the next meeting, or if it's gonna be the month after that. But I like that idea better than the subcommittee.
All right. Thank you, Billy. Jim Reese, your input, please.
I agree with Billy. I think that your idea of letting us review this a little more in depth and offer some written suggestions would allow us to come back and talk about this a lot more educatedly, if that's a word, next month.
Chris Bray, your input, please.
I concur with the other 2. I think we need time to look at it.
Yeah, Steve Williams.
I agree. I like the idea of everyone looking at it rather than have a subcommittee. That way, this is a pretty important chapter, and everyone's input should play. The question, I had 2 questions actually. One was, is this something that we're doing just as a planning commission, or like we did before, is it with the Board of Trustees?
Karen, do you want to answer? I believe we will work through it and we will recommend to the Board of Trustees for their approval.
We'll make but I just want to clarify something. When we were talking about the subcommittee, what that meant is that 2 of your members would actually be the people that you send those notes to. So everybody is still participating, and you can still take it, the document and actually change that, or send your comments to the subcommittee, although you'd have to just send to 1 person, so we stay within sunshine law. But it was never meant to cut out the full committee working together. It was just ease of how do you capture the information and then transcribe it and then do, kind of an organized revisit to the document. Thank you.
And Chair Cornell, I just want you to know that Trustee Taylor is now on, if you want to get his feedback.
Thank you. I don't know how much, Julian, you have listened in, but we are discussing a procedure to actually for everybody to give their input to the subdivision draft. And then you're going to review it too. So I don't know your comments now on what you've heard so far.
Oh, I haven't heard enough to be able to comment. I will make sure and read the document, though.
So the other question I had was whether should we come together to review this as a special workshop, or we would do this as part of a regular meeting?
Karen, your input on?
Yeah, that's really your option. But that's why if you did have, let's say, Karen and 1 other member who's actually collecting this information, then those 2 people could meet between meetings and also gather the information. It really would help with your flow of information, and then be able to pull it all together and bring it back to your next meeting. But that way you could actually get some stuff done before your next meeting. So that's just my suggestion.
My one thing, I guess, for the next meeting is because we'll have 2 applications. Maybe there is some consideration about having a special meeting, just because that will lead to a lengthy meeting if you added this on top of it.
That's a good point.
I sort of like the idea of a separate workshop to do it. We did that before when we had the committee with the Board of Trustees, and it worked out pretty well to concentrate on this one item. Regarding the process, I would recommend that everybody puts their, comments into this document like Jennifer did, so that we can see everything together, and then maybe have a few people kind of boil it down, or maybe try to resolve any, issues that there are conflicts or disagreements or whatever before we come back to the full planning commission.
I do want to just make a comment about that, please, Steve. When we did it with the other group and we had a shared document that anyone could review, we actually posted it on our website and made it a public process that anybody could participate in, just so we could guarantee that we would not be operating outside the sunshine law. So if you do have a document, let's say a Google Doc, that anybody could get on and anyone could be working on, I just wonder if Jennifer Madsen wouldn't mind weighing in on whether or not we would bump up against the sunshine law if you had access to that document, your entire committee, and it hasn't been publicly noticed.
So I think it's okay if we have a Google Doc that we're working in, that everybody's working in, and that at one point in time, that document, say the next meeting or at a special meeting, that document with all of the comments is made public in advance, that would be fine.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is that perhaps do a first cut at this with everybody's input, and then put the document into more shape for review, and then post it after that. Is that would that be a good process?
Yeah, I would like to actually do that. Let's just see how many comments we have. I mean, I think it's a good draft, and let's just see. I would like to at least try with everybody's input, and then if we see that this, oh my goodness, is just overwhelming, then certainly Karen Blakemore certainly spoke up that she'd like to be in committee. I certainly did work on it, but we could look at any other volunteers. But let's just try to do the first 3 weeks with everybody just giving input, and let's just see how difficult or how many, we all might be saying the exact same thing, just asking the same questions. So I question just if we actually need to tune it at this point. Let's see how, work 3 weeks, see how much input we get. And I think the question of coming back, say, if we all can, maybe at a 6 o'clock work session before the October meeting. But I would like everybody to just put in their input and flag it and see what they think. And let's just take it from there. I certainly heard the other guy say that, everybody wanted to actually to have input and do the flag thing. So I think that's what I'm hearing, other than Karen, when I suggested the subcommittee, and she certainly wants to be on it, and that would be great. But can we try the first round with everybody involved, just flagging their own comments? And we'll get that set up so everybody can give their input and everybody will be familiar with the process. So we'll have to work through that in the next week too.
I just want to make a note. So the next meeting is October 28th. And if we did have a 6 o'clock work session, we do have a couple big topics to talk about next month. So I'm not sure how long that would go if we added a work session beforehand. So something to consider. If we were to try to set up a meeting after that, we're looking at trying to figure out a meeting to offside the holiday meetings, which usually fall around the 4th Wednesday of every month. And November and December, they fall very close to Thanksgiving and Christmas. So we usually try to find a time to meet somewhere in the middle, possibly have 2 meetings or 1 meeting to cover November and December. So this may be something we can tack on if we have to push it that late, but something to consider that we are running out of meetings this year.
Okay, I agree, and we've not waited a long time, but this is certainly not an emergency issue, something that we can just work on. So whether it's October or November, at a special, whatever that
Yeah,
special
maybe
date is,
mid-November or
we can
something.
do that, which we've always done. We've always worked at the October meeting to say which days are the best days for November and December. We've always set the agenda in October. So first of all, I would actually like to have everybody review it, flag their comments, and let's see where we go. To me, that's the first step, and just see, it might not be all that complicated. We might not have all that many notes, and then also the notes might not be that difficult to resolve because it's a very good draft. So let's just continue on, whether we have October or November. I think we'll know that in the next 3 weeks just by the input and see how monumental the task will be. So that's the way I feel about it. Does anybody disagree with that, to just start, take 3 weeks, see what the input is, then we will decide on either October or November to put it on the agenda for further discussion and final review. Any comment?
No, I agree with you. My only comment, and I don't know who's handling the document, Miranda or whoever puts it up, but I think with Google Docs, I don't know if this is actually a fluid document or a PDF, but you have to, there's different settings. One is you just edit and the changes happen and no one else sees them happen. And the other one is like suggesting or reviewing, where everyone gets to see the edits and then we can collaborate later. Is that something you can control, Miranda? So that we all are in the right function when we start editing?
Yeah, that is. I will make sure that you can see each other's edits.
Okay.
And if anyone has problems, then just email me. But after we're done with tonight's meeting, I'll upload that document.
Okay.
Some of us might just send you that on a Word document. Sorry.
Okay. Anybody, any other comments from the commissioners? Okay, then let's just try to do the joint process where it's whatever it is, Google or however the staff sets it up. We'll just work through at least the review for the first go around, the first 3 weeks. I think that would be very productive. Staff, go ahead.
Can I make a comment here that there are items that are not included in the document that I would like for you to all consider and think about, and that was mentioned in the AIM. And one of those things was the site design standards that are currently existing in the subdivision regulations, and they are not included in this draft. So think about if that's something that you would like to have added to this draft, have added to the subdivision regulations, and if you would like any changes made to the site design standards. And then the other thing that I wanted to point out is to also think about referrals. That's something that could be different or changed in this document, is who you want the referring agencies to be for the subdivision plats. So in other words, there are bigger picture items that should be considered that might not be in the document, and I don't want everybody's review to just be solely on the document.
Okay. All right. So yes, I think the site design standards, if we could add that for review, that'd be great. And I think the referrals, the number of copies that go to who and where and all those things, I think that's, maybe we need to make a note of that. And I know, Jennifer, if you can, you'll be monitoring the process too. So again, your comments will be continuous also, I would hope. So, but certainly I agree with everything you said, and let's just go ahead and proceed to give, to look at the entire body for review, and we can fine tune from there.
Okay,
Chair
perfect.
Cornell, I think Commissioner Blakemore has a question.
Karen,
So I'm wondering if Miranda could list the things that Jennifer just mentioned in the email that you send to the commissioners with the link to the Google Doc or whatever we'll be modifying. So
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
okay, thanks.
okay, any other comment from staff? Any further comment from the commissioners?
So I'm assuming staff would review this as well as the commission. Is that correct?
It's an open document, right? Yes.
We were whipping through it tonight. I almost wish that we were ready to have this discussion. It's already time for training. My favorite.
So there was, the next item under this discussion item, there was public comment from Susan Wagner. Is Susan here?
So her comment, no, she's not here tonight, so that's why she emailed you all her comments. And as I said in my email, those are really just questions to consider as you're looking at the revisions and suggestions for the subdivision ordinance recommendation.
I think what's really relevant is she was taking issue with a subdivision that was done in 2004, I think, or 2005. And so obviously we don't want these decisions to come back 15 years later with people having questions and confusion about things. So consider the longevity of this document. The current one running, as Attorney Madsen noted, has been in effect for 40 years. And consider that people do read these regulations and will hold us to them. So let's make sure we make good, sound decisions. And I think that's a good segue into, drum roll please, our planning refresher workshop. If you guys are ready.
So I just wanted to say before we move on, Cynthia, was that, so anybody from the public and especially Susan Wagner, as she sends those emails, that's what I was going to say, that those questions and her input on the draft should be also taken. So let it be known that anybody can send an email to staff and we can input that into the discussion of this new draft. So everybody, that's available for everybody. Okay, so we'll finish the discussion. We'll move on to the informational then, which is the refresher.
Yay. Thanks for that, Chair Cornell. I think that's a really important point, Susan Wagner's comments, and considering that against the subdivision regulations as well. So that rolls us into our planner refresher workshop. This was given by DOLA back in 2016. Remember that back then? It's been a long year. So we're going to go over background and planning authority of the Planning Commission, the different roles and responsibilities, long-range planning and implementation, meetings and decision-making, and legal and ethical issues. We're going to highlight some of those more than others. Namely the roles and responsibilities, meetings and decision-making, and the legal and ethical issues, although we'll go over everything, but I think those are really important aspects. We have some new folks to the commission, and we have some folks who've been on for a long time, and whether you're new to us or you've been on for a while, I think this is really important information to refresh on as you guys make these important decisions working forward. Next slide. Thanks, Miranda. So we'll cruise on to, these are some, I think we can kind of move on, but there are planning resources located at DOLA, and there's a link there. They provide land use assistance. They have downtown revitalization assistance, a Main Street program at the Community Development Office. And there are DOLA regional managers. Don Sandoval, I believe, is our regional manager here. Is that correct, Karen?
No, he actually resigned, and so we have a new.
Okay, fine.
Yeah, well, we have but we have a new guy, and he's great. It's Chris LeMay.
Okay, great. So this information's a bit dated from 2016, but we keep going forward so we can keep scrolling forward, Miranda. This provides some planning resources, the CDO office, and demographic resources. And you can keep going forward here. Sorry, these were 6 to a page, so we're kind of moving slowly here. Planning and planning authority. Why should we plan? It makes us more efficient and effective. They say an hour of planning saves 10 hours of work. I think that's true. We get to seize opportunities that we see. We prevent undesirable development and hazard, eyesores, other things. So the work of the Planning Commission is important stuff. And we can keep cruising forward, Miranda. There are different roles, local planning efforts. So there's no formal oversight of local governments. There's which is DOLA. This is DOLA saying they don't provide formal oversight of local municipalities. They provide technical and financial assistance. We've had some DOLA grants here. The authority to plan is in the state statutes. For home rules, it's a home rule charter. For statutory governments, it is the state statutes. And then, of course, our local ordinances. We are a statutory town here in Nederland, and so our authority is granted from the enabling legislation in the state statutes. The statutory authority is the rights and government to establish laws and ordinances to preserve public order and tranquility, to promote the public health, safety, morals, and general welfare. And that is reserved to states, and the states grant us that governments through our statutes. The statutory authority, these regulations must be tied to valid public purpose, that's called substantive due process, and be enacted and implemented so that those who are directly affected have a meaningful opportunity to participate. We'll get into that more in this training and as we speak about meetings, and that is procedural due process. The statutorily required planning that provides the state statutes that you can see about master plans, subdivision regulations for counties, and 3-mile plans. We get into the roles and responsibilities. Don't have to scratch your head. There are different roles and responsibilities. We have elected officials. We have the planning commission that's appointed. We have town staff. We have citizens, and we have applicants. So we go over these various roles. The elected officials, they make policy and they legislate. They use the enabling authority to protect the public interest. They hire staff, they appoint boards. Y'all are appointed by the Board of Trustees, and they provide general direction and ongoing two-way communication. And you can move forward, Miranda. The Planning Commission, my favorite. They are the advisory to the Board of Trustees. They prepare our comprehensive plan and work on that and follow those regulations. They apply current policy and regulations, and we certainly discuss policies that need changes and regulations that need to be updated. They provide planning and land use expertise. They review development applications, which is the meat of the Planning Commission. They regularly assess planning policies and regulations and adopt and consistently use their bylaws. Town staff, we offer technical expertise and guidance, provide information and training. We review and report on, those are generally how we introduce the applications, to summarize applications before you in order to make decisions. And we ensure good communication and try to offer our professional opinions. Next slide. Our citizens are full participators. They advise appointed and elected officials. They ask questions and offer solutions. They have particular expertise and information that I think is really relevant, and it's always nice to have robust public participation. The applicants, they need to learn and respect our adopted rules and procedures. They expect fair and predictable processes. We hope they're not trying to work the system, and they can communicate issues and concerns to us, and they work generally with staff until they come before you. And they should have realistic expectations and understanding of the role of government. We work hard at town staff to explain the processes and procedures that we have to go through with their applications so they feel prepared to come before you. So in slowing down and reflecting together, We can consider what isn't working well. So the Planning Commission should consider what's not working well. The staff can consider where are we seeing issues emerge and what sort of trends are happening. It says regular retreats with the elected board. Unfortunately, we don't have that big of a budget. So we do try to have a work session, a joint work session with the board where the Planning Commission can discuss the board goals and set our work plan for the future. And we should do that at some point when we have an ability to do that. Long range planning and implementation, that is more the planning part of this planning board. So we consider the comprehensive plan, which is the community vision. It serves as our roadmap. It's an advisory, not regulatory document on its own. Can be mandatory if it was adopted as such. The comprehensive plan we adopted in 2013. So they generally get adopted there's usually about a 5-year update, although Nederland moves a little bit slower than that. But that's kind of a good average to work on and improve the comprehensive plan. It does take some time to get it through the process, which is about a year. So we do need to be working on that. The standard plan elements include land use, transportation, utilities, facilities, affordable housing, environmental, cultural, historical elements, urban influence areas, educational facilities, energy, economic development, parks and open space. The last line, recreation and tourism, is actually a requirement of all comprehensive plans in the state of Colorado. So that is a mandatory inclusion, and there can be others. So those are just kind of basic things, and we have many of those in our existing comprehensive plan. The comp plan does provide guidance for zone change requests, land use code incentives, decisions about expansion of major infrastructure, decisions about location of new infrastructure, and annexation requests. Some of this is in other master plans and summarized in the comprehensive plan. That's a copy of our comprehensive 2013 plan update, which actually won an honor award for sustainability. So that was a pretty cool thing. The Community Development Office's tips on comprehensive plans. They should be regularly updated. They should be integrate the planning and policies. This is a perfect time to revisit intergovernmental agreements. We do have a super IGA with Boulder County, and that IGA is set to expire in 2022. So there's been some discussion on it, but I think that's kind of taken a pause. Considering the 3-mile plan, that's the 3 miles surrounding Nederland and what would occur there, updating our land use code immediately after, so including any necessary elements, and consider addressing water supply and conservation hazards, downtown revitalization and economic development, and the role of planning and built environment and public health. Those are some elements that I do think we need to add to our next comprehensive plan. So water planning, wildfire planning, disaster planning, those kind of things, in addition to updates in the comprehensive plan. Other long-range plans, there are other plans that happen like capital improvement plan and master infrastructure plan. They note corridor plans, water supply plans, energy plans. So we have a number of plans. There's parks plan and other things. And the really important thing is that we consider all of these and whether they support or they conflict with each other. It's important to cooperatively plan because issues for planning are complex and interrelated and they affect each other. Planning issues and growth impacts, they don't respect political boundaries. I think that's a relevant concept in 2020. Applicants can shop for the best deal among the plans they see. So if they're not coordinated, they can find something in one plan and try to use that to their advantage. There can be incompatible standards if we don't have plans aligned. And you spend more money, more tax dollars trying to fix problems if we don't actually align the plans together. Planning tools. Vision to comprehensive plan to tools. So these are different elements, the 3-mile plan, annexation policies, IGAs, planned unit development, subdivision regulations, zoning, building codes, incentives, and programs. Those are all important elements to consider in terms of vision and coming through the comprehensive plan and different tools that are in that. I think this next picture here is I think these the existing plane that they're in is February 2020, and the plane coming at them is March 2020. So
Everything's going great.
meetings and decision making. Oh, this is awesome. Do your meetings look like a civilized table full of gentlemen making decisions, or do they look like people with torches, unhappy about decisions? That's a interesting comparison to make this year. The different types of action to consider of the planning board. There's also administrative action, and that's town staff, but the different actions before the planning commission are legislative, which is public policy relating to matters of permanent or general character. It's important that that's not restricted to a specific individual or a specific lot. The quasi-judicial QJ applications, they involve the determination of rights or obligations of an individual. So the use of legislative rules to make a determination on an application, it's very specific to an application, and there are specific rules, which we will get into later in this training here. Public meetings. They are important to champion public participation. So it's important for the chair and the board to explain the context and how to participate. That's usually in Chair Cornell's wheelhouse there. Limiting the jargon so the public can understand what we're talking about, as they may not read the Chapter 16 zoning like Chair Cornell and the rest of you do. And these meetings are a form of community ambassadorship. So people are listening to these meetings and they're seeing what the town is about and how things are decided. So I think that's a relevant consideration when tuning into these meetings. And it's important to remain courteous no matter what. So I think that's important. That bottom picture there is actually of our old meeting room. And when I looked at that, I shed a small tear that we haven't met publicly in a long time, like the old days. So public hearings, it's important to announce the rules in advance and enforce them consistently. I want to underscore that. That's a really, really important point. And I think Chair Cornell has done a great job in explaining and opening these public hearings and explaining public comment and the rules and how we will move forward. We start with the staff report, so that's where we introduce and summarize the application. We go into remaining unbiased while hearing evidence. So that's really important for planners to remain unbiased while they hear the evidence. They don't have their minds made up before they've come to this meeting or before they're hearing all the information that's being presented to them. There's an importance for a strong chair and a supportive board. We need to stay on task and avoid tangents. And so that's kind of the job of Chair Cornell, to bring you back in line and for the board to remember the task at hand and to consider things that are germane to the application, and to make careful motions which are legally defensible. That's a really important point. And I think that rolls us into the next slide here. Yes, decision making. So we get into decision making. There are common hurdles that can happen. Defensible procedure, that is incredibly important. The motions that are made and findings of fact. It's important to remember a popular decision is not always a good decision, and a good decision isn't always popular. And that's a consideration in a small town with volunteers who are affected by the decisions they made. So it's an important consideration. Common hurdles and mistakes to avoid: not being prepared. It's important to read the packets and ask questions. Too detail focused and losing sight of the bigger picture. It's important not to ask for a vote of the audience. You're making this decision, and although the audience will weigh in and public comment is allowed, it is important that the decision is before you to make. It's important not to show bias before the decision is made. This is especially important as we get into that next point, which is defensible procedures. So with respect to public hearings, a public hearing notice is required, and that's state law that we notice these applications. We do so in the newspaper. We do so on the site. the picture shows a tree with a public hearing notice, we do something like that. Not with tape though, I use a stapler. And we also send notice to folks in the 300 foot buffer around the property. So with respect to the meetings, the public notice is important to allow opportunity to speak, the opportunity to be heard for folks who want to make public comment, that the Planning Commission is following clear rules and that the findings of their decision are relevant and clear. They're making unbiased and timely decision. And what results from that are complete records. So it's really tough for staff when we have incomplete things and we try to follow what happened, or we have to research from 20 years ago and figure out what happened with something. So that complete records is important both for town staff, but also, as we noted earlier, as Attorney Madsen noted with respect to subdivision regulations, of why it's important to have that subdivision plat and for lots to be able to be sold and for folks to understand what they're buying and other things. So those complete records are really valid. I've spent a lot of time trying to clean things up from the past that weren't quite cleared up or completed. So it's an important point. With respect to motions, we should have well-prepared motions, and that does take some effort being clear. There's always a lot of discussion and being clear what is the motion that's being made. And the motion should explain to the applicant and the audience how that decision was made. So in essence, if they are tuning in right at that point as the motion is being made, to understand what is being made and sort of how they arrived there, and agreeing on procedures that will be used for the meetings and for motions, so that we follow that clear procedure so people understand what to expect. The findings of fact, we do that more for the Board of Zoning Adjustment. Certainly it's contained within the content of the minutes, but essentially they're factual foundations for conclusions as to whether the standards are met, legal footprints and things like that. The facts must address the standards. It's asking questions designed to get evidence related to the standards, and the burden of proof falls upon the applicant. And you can rely on personal knowledge, but you should make it part of the record. So the next section is legal and ethical issues, and this is extremely important stuff to be aware of and to understand how to keep us out of trouble with respect to legal issues and ethical dilemmas. Areas of concern that you should note are ex parte communication, gifts and favors, and conflicts of interest. Ex parte contact is defined as any written or verbal communication initiated outside of a regularly noticed public hearing between an official with decision-making authority and one or more of the parties, but not all of the parties, about a subject that is under or about to be under consideration by that official and that seeks to influence or present information about that subject. That is a lot of words, but I think the picture that accompanies it explains it very, very easily. You're in the grocery store and someone in a small town is going to ask you, hey, what do you know about this application? Or what do you think about that? I know you sit on that planning commission, so what do you think about this? It's incredibly important to understand that would contact ex parte communication. And the way to address that is, I'm sorry, I would like to preserve my ability to vote on this application at the Planning Commission. I can't discuss that with you. And if you have any questions, you should talk to town staff. So we can go to the next slide. I can talk to anyone about the application, and I'm just going to give them fact-based information about the application. So they go further to note why ex parte is important. It's essential to preserve public confidence in due process. The board and commission should ensure the public and interested parties have the opportunity to know and respond to all information that the board considers in making its decisions. The board should also ensure that each board member has the opportunity to know and consider the information available to other board members. If someone's talking to you at the grocery store, that's information that they may know that other board members are not hearing, and that does get us into legal hot water. So that next slide where it says, help, what should I do if someone attempts to talk to me? Exactly as I said. I'm sorry, I'd like to be able to vote on this application at the Planning Commission. And in order to preserve my vote, I do need to not talk about this application outside of the meeting. You can please contact Cynthia or Miranda at town staff and they can talk to you about the process. Next slide. So ex parte contact, stop the person, explain why the contact is inappropriate. I think you can just say you want to be able to vote on it. Disclose the contact. So if they've had, you know, more than a little bit of communication before you could stop them, it's important to just note, hey, someone tried to talk to me at the grocery store. And why that's important is if the applicant was walking by at the grocery store and saw you talking to someone, they could presume that you're speaking about their application and they could make that point, whether it's true or not. You could be talking about your children and they could think, hey, you guys are talking about the application. So it's really important that you disclose that contact. Recusal. If, for example, you know the person or you have investment in it, or there's some other reason why there's a conflict of interest, you can recuse from that. Commissioner Glasser did that with Mary Huggins and these applications, as she's known Mary for a long time and said she had dinner at her house and talked about the application. So she recused from participating in the conversation about it and from taking a vote. So it's very simple. And the consideration of adopting formal procedures. I don't think we've done that very much at the Planning Commission, but I do think that the disclosure and recusal is important if necessary. Ex parte outreach and education. Please note, and this is from the Chaffey County website, and I think this actually articulates it very well. Please note, it is inappropriate to personally contact individual county commissioners or planning commission members while an application is pending. Such contact is considered ex parte communication, will have to be disclosed as part of the public hearings on the matter. If you have any concerns, you should contact staff, write a letter, or present your concerns at a public meeting so your comments can be made part of the record. We don't have that up on our website, but I think that is really important. And we do talk to applicants about that, about not talking to the board members or planning commissioners while their application is in review. Conflicts of interest. This is an important consideration. There's a conflict of interest if you're a member of a governing body.
Hey, Cynthia, before you move on, can I interrupt you for just 1 second?
Please.
I think this is a good time to mention something that comes up from time to time for the Planning Commission, and that is the difference between ex parte contacts and site visits and conducting outside research. One thing, all of you are in a very small community. The applications that come before you for development proposals are down the street from you, or, you know, clearly in your neighborhood, and you're going to drive by those sites on a regular basis, visit them. It is important that if you do a site visit or you do conduct any research related to an application, to mention that at the meeting that you have visited the site, and here are your observations. A, B, C. This is what I saw. And the reason for doing that is that it gives the applicant an opportunity to respond to your observations. So if you're going to vote one way or the other based on those observations, it allows the applicant to address those concerns. Sorry to interrupt, Cynthia.
Thanks so much. That's actually awesome. I appreciate that. Sorry, I know you had mentioned that you wanted to talk about that, so thanks for including that. There is conflict of interest if you are a member of a governing body and you have a personal or private interest in the matter proposed or pending before you. What you should do if you do have a conflict, the Colorado law requires that you do all of the following: disclose the conflict, abstain from voting, and don't attempt to influence the other's vote. So that's a state statute there at the bottom, noting the conflict of interest in Colorado law, and that's really important stuff. So we're in a small town, it does happen, and it's important to disclose it. especially in order to keep these decisions being legally defensible, which we always want. In the next slide, we speak about gifts and favors. So this applies to government employees or elected and appointed officials. You cannot accept gifts or favors directly or indirectly. It's been updated, I guess, gifts up to $65 a year. In general, I try to avoid it. I have a lot of people who say, hey, can I talk to you about my application? I'll buy you a coffee or I'll buy you a beer. And I say, yeah, we can get a beer, we can get a coffee, and I'll buy it myself. Thanks. I just try to stay out of everyone's pocket. I'm a neutral party in all of this. So, you know, I'm happy to discuss applications. That's my job. And I don't need to be bribed to do it. So I try to stay out of the gift realm of things. It's a small town. And I think that's an important thing that, you know, those things can be perceived as bribery. The Colorado Governmental Immunity Act protects government officials when acting within the scope of their duties. I think that's really important. It's a benefit to know that there is some protection, but obviously if you're not making legally defensible decisions, then that erodes that immunity in a sense. So let's all make sure that we follow that. Next slide. How to lose your immunity. Prejudge a matter. That is really important not to do. You are hearing new evidence. You're hearing information for the first time at the meeting, and that's important to hear that and not have a decision already ready to be made. It's important not to engage in ex parte communication. It's important not to make a decision that violates our established laws. So knowing the laws and understanding the tenets of the zoning chapter and subdivision chapter is really important. Acting beyond the scope of your authority, ignoring or going against the publicly given legal advice, and ignoring or acting outside the bounds of established procedures or ordinances. I think it's really important that we maintain that immunity by following those simple procedures. Public meetings are under Colorado Sunshine Law for open meeting law, and it requires public notice for meetings where formal action occurs and public business is discussed or quorum is present. So that's any more than 3 members, I think, in a discussion is considered a public meeting. So if 3 members of this board are chatting and it's not in a public meeting, it's considered a public meeting that needs to be noticed. So that's something that should be considered. Minutes are required when formal action occurs. So meeting minutes to provide information about what was discussed. And the suggested rule of practice is that all meetings are open, noticed, and the minutes are there for formal actions. So as a wrap up, we went over the importance of and the authority in the Colorado Constitution to plan, revised statutes to plan, the relationship with, for staff, elected officials, commission, applicants, and the public, integrating and implementing our plans and policies, considering meeting management and decision-making very carefully, leaving solid findings and a record of decision, and being aware of ethical issues. There's a link to the DOLA Colorado Community Development Office in case you want to find some more resources. This was Ann Miller. She's no longer with DOLA. I think she's working with
She actually is with DOLA, but she's working with their CRO. She moved into like Colorado Resiliency Office, which is like a sub office of, but she's wonderful.
She really is. She's a wonderful resource. We had her up here in 2016, or I think it was January of 2017, and she gave the Planner 101 training that I had gotten Nederland to offer, and we had folks from Gilpin County and Central City. We had someone here from Jamestown and Ward, and we had board and planning commissioners. So that was a great way to offer that planning 101 rather than folks going down to Golden. There's usually an annual training in Golden which I believe they would do virtually this year. And Steve and Jim have attended that training in the past. I think they went last year, which is great because you're sitting in a room full of elected officials and planning commissioners and about ethical issues that come up and discuss that at length. So it's a great opportunity. If you have the opportunity to attend that training, it's really wonderful.
Yeah,
Are
that
there
was
any-
good because they
go ahead.
had exercises to go through, you know, kind of like little scenarios that brought light to a lot of what you talked about, Cynthia. So yes, and Jim can chime in too, but I thought it was a great session.
Excellent.
Some of those scenarios are complex. I mean, even when you work in this for years, you can have some questionable things, and so just that bit of the training is really wonderful to kind of flex your muscles on that and consider different ethical issues. There's a lot of stuff that comes before us, so I would love to hear if Jim wants to add anything, and then if anyone has any questions about the training, please let me know.
I'm glad that you reviewed this. It's basically an abbreviated version of an all-day training that, at these different segments, they broke out into, some more in-depth discussion or some exercises, small group exercises that was pretty good because of the, different diverse group of people that were there. But I encourage anybody who has a chance to go to it to go. It's free, or if it wasn't free, it was pretty cheap.
And Jim and I left a packet at Town Hall. I think it's still there, isn't it, Cynthia? That anyone that wants to come by and take a look at it.
I believe I have that somewhere.
Yeah. What there was the most interesting part about it that I found was they really talked about the importance of planning for, the changing towns, for developing towns and what their look is going to be. And we're clearly a town that over the next 10 to 20 years is going to not look the same. And they had a lot of resources in talking about how you can go in and look at some basically other communities, how they addressed it. And they showed a lot of examples that I thought was very interesting and could be applicable to our planning commission when we start getting some 3-story complex planning, building commission ideas.
Well, not only that, but as community ages, there's a whole different paradigm of what your community will look like with an older, residents.
And I think too, as Attorney Mattson had noted, the subdivision regulations are 40, they're 40 years old. And are they still, what is still relevant? And so keeping up to date with the code and considering how communities change and what's relevant to us, and making sense of these things. I think a lot of what I do for applicants, whether it's with building permitting or land use processes, is trying to make sense of why these things are included in code. If I can explain it to them, then it can make a lot more sense than sort of the wah 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 of code. If you can kind of explain, these are the reasons and these are the considerations of trying to avoid impact. Because most people are just thinking, hey, I have this great idea. What do you mean impacts? There can't be impacts. And so, in any development, there are potential impacts. So it's important to, for us to consider that. And all of that falls under the wonderful wheelhouse of our planning commission. So Chair Cornell, do you want to add anything?
Yes, the only thing I'd add that just please everybody, without going back into another discussion, always monitor.
I think your internet slowed down there, Steve. And we lost you. Hopefully they'll be able to dial back in and we'll get that.
Timing was perfect. Always remember.
And we'll hold until the next meeting. Well, we'll see if they come back to us. But in the interim of that, does anyone else on the commission have any questions about this presentation or any of the content therein?
I don't have a question, but I just want to thank you, Cynthia and Jennifer, for the presentation, because it really, I needed that refresher, and the additional information that Jennifer provided is very appreciated to me.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Commissioner Blakemore. I appreciate that. This is important work that you guys do, and there's definitely, elected and appointed official liability. So it's important to understand the boundaries in which you operate with respect to what you do. You're volunteers, so you do a lot for the community, and it's important to understand where you can stay within legally defensible decisions and where you should not stray. And that can be a challenge in a really small town. So it's good to go over this on a regular basis. Anyone else have any questions? The meeting has fallen silent.
All right.
Did we get you back?
Yeah,
I
Okay.
think we're back.
unbelievable. I'm sorry. So we're going to get to town staff reports, sir. Karen Garrity, how far did we get through while we were gone?
Sure. Well, I'll just get started and I'll be brief. I'm sure you're all excited. So the report is in your packets. I do want to recognize Rita Six. She's our new town accountant. She's only been with us for 6 weeks, and she's already just doing a fantastic job. She's already created 2 monthly financial reports. She's worked with me very intensely on creating the draft 2021 budget. She's building relationships with all the department heads. She's learning all of our processes for our accounts receivable and payable. And I just want to call her out and give her some kudos for doing such a great job. As far as COVID-19 goes, the information that's in your packet is already outdated. In the beginning of the month, things were looking pretty good, but things have gone downhill pretty quickly. We're seeing quite a surge in cases in our county. We're actually one of the worst counties in the state, and most of it can be traced back to CU Boulder. CU Boulder has enforced a 2-week quarantine. They are going strictly, they started today, as a matter of fact, at 6 a.m. officially, conducting all of their classes online for at least 2 weeks. So they're going to continue to monitor the number of cases, and we'll see when and if they do open it back up for some in-person classes. Because of what's happening with this increase, the significant increase in the number of positive tests, Boulder County and Boulder Public Health are working together, and they've established some free testing sites down in Boulder. There's one at Stasio Field and one on Pleasant, and you don't have to have symptoms. You don't have to have an appointment. They are free. I'm also really pleased to announce that Boulder County Public Health is working with some nonprofit groups in the mountain areas to see if we can bring some testing up here. So stay tuned. I'll let you know as soon as we have something official from the county. So,
Karen,
Yes.
a quick question. What about Nederland? How are we doing in Nederland?
we still only have 2 confirmed cases. So, that's good news. The thing is that the state has gone to this new dial procedure of deciding for a county or what level they're at. So right now, and the dial basically that's created by the Colorado Department of Public Health, it lists all the different criteria and requirements and restrictions based on the number of cases that you have in your county. So right now, Boulder is in safer at home level 2. We're on those restrictions, which means like our last call, I think, is at 11 p.m. We can have, businesses open, but of course with some restrictions. The concern at the county level is that if we don't kind of rein this in and get on top of this, and we get too many cases, then more restrictions could be put in place. The good news, though, is that the state gives each county 2 weeks to sort of get back into meeting the requirements of the particular level that they're at. So it's kind of all hands on deck right now. The county, the city of Boulder, CU Boulder, the Boulder County Public Health Department are all working really closely. And actually the Boulder County Office of Emergency Management just reactivated, and they're also working very closely with CU Boulder because none of us, want to see community-wide spread, and then that could result in shutting down businesses even more. Our businesses are already very concerned about the winter months and, going into further restrictions, especially if we had to go back to stay at home. Would definitely have a huge economic impact. And of course, we just don't want to see people getting sick. We aren't seeing the number of hospitalities or fatalities that we did in the past surges. And that's basically because the spread is really happening with a much younger population. They're saying that 18 to 24-year-olds, I believe in Boulder County, are more than 50% of the new cases. So we'll keep you posted on that. As far as Tungsten Village update goes, we did have the virtual ribbon cutting today, which was really lovely, and our mayor spoke and whatnot. They've leased almost all of the spaces. Quite a few people who did end up with leases are from the Nederland area. So they're either from the town, work in the town, or are in the area. So we were very pleased to hear that because that was one of the requests that the town made with the Boulder County Housing Authority, which was to make sure that locals were given preference. I did put in the report, the Aldora Mountain Resort kind of opening guidelines, and their opening day, as probably most of you know, is scheduled right now for November 23rd. I also have information about community development. We're still very busy. You can still see we're still getting lots of activity between inspections and permits and whatnot. We do anticipate that'll be slowing down in the next month or so. I do have a schedule for the budget process, the 2021 budget process. We had our second work session last night. It went very, very well. We have our summary budgets that we presented for each fund to our Board of Trustees last night. And now we'll be presenting the draft 2021 budget publicly on October 6th. And then you can see the rest of the schedule as well. You're all, of course, welcome to participate in that as you would like. All of our meetings are open to the public. We have a town hall update regarding Amanda Sporlensky, which Chair Cornell mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. She's covering the front desk. She's the administrative assistant for the town. We also have some information from Public Works with some of the cool things that are happening with Public Works. We are wrapping up, of course, the busiest time of the year. But a cool thing that happened was the paving of Congress Street. Hopefully you've all noticed it. It's actually the first road that the Public Works team ever paved. So we're getting new equipment, new materials, new training, and hopefully it's just the beginning and you'll see a lot more road improvements that are actually handled by Public Works. And then finally, we just have some more information regarding the Nederland Community Center and the fitness place and the hours that were opened. So of course, if it's all very safe, our manager for the community center, Don Baumhover, is very, very strict and making sure that there's social distancing, masks are worn, the equipment's getting cleaned regularly, so on and so forth. So if it's something that you feel like you want to do, please come and visit us. You can either sign up online ahead of time or you can just show up when we're open. So that's what I have. Any questions?
Any questions? I have one question, Karen. And actually, I'm chagrined when I see the budget going up, but in the past, staff has always put something in there if needed for the Planning Commission. So is there any action that you guys do for, as far as the Planning Commission and the budget?
I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you asking if there's a line item for the Planning Commission?
If there is one, do we need to do one? I mean, I try to think.
There is, no. So what there is, there's a board of trustees, sort of a subsection of our administration and finance. They have funds set aside for training and things like that. The whole thought has been, if there is a board or commission, another, an advisory board or whatever, and they want to have some training or whatever, we would look at that budget. So anything for boards and commission has to have already been included in that budget. I will tell you that over the last couple of years, the Board of Trustees has kind of cut back on their budget over the last few years. And especially with the pandemic, we haven't added anything to that budget. But my point is that if there is something that the Planning Commission needs, something comes up, do go ahead and check in with me, and then we will check the budget. We will look at the Board of Trustees budget, which again is basically supposed to cover for the boards and commissions, and we'll see if we can find any money.
I think we were thinking specifically any, with regard to the updating of the comprehensive plan and some of that stuff. In the past, we've been able to get some support to help with that.
Yes, we have actually, right now, there are, when we get to that point, because we're doing the Envisioning 2030, but it's actually taking longer than we would have liked. But we've got the pandemic going, so everything's kind of slowed down because we can't have these group meetings. But we do anticipate that hopefully next year, we'd be looking at potentially the comp plan update once Envision 2030 is done. And if that is something that collectively is decided that it's time to update that, and that money would come, we've actually identified 2 different grant sources. Of course, DOLA has a grant in that, and something they've done differently now. Used to be that you could only have one admin grant going at a time. And of course, you guys all know that we've got an admin grant going right now for the Big Springs Egress project that we're still working on finalizing the design and that type of thing. But now you can actually apply for a second administrative grant. And then also, I know Cynthia had identified funds that were available through GOCO through a different grant process. Now, I'm just giving you the caveat, though, that with COVID-19, a lot of grant makers are changing things up. Like DOLA's gone from $30 million a year to $15 million. So it's a cut in half. Their processes are also reduced from 4 times a year to, I believe, twice a year. Same thing with GOCO. GOCO changed up one of their grants kind of last minute to be more COVID related. So that being said, yes, the idea of updating the comp plan is still very much out there as a potential, but we want to get through the Envision 2030 process first and see where that takes us, because that will be included in that conversation. Have we met everything in the comp plan that was done in 2013? Is it time to just update it? Do we need to start all over again? It's kind of, you got to look at the status of where we're at. So does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yeah, I think well, we'll just say and I've talked to the mayor too, and as you said, the Envision 2030 is the next thing on the agenda. And, you know, and actually it's not an update. You could call it an update, but 10 years have gone by. So 2023, which would be the day for the year for the comp plan, that's soon upon us. So the envisioning is next. So where are we at with envisioning? That was a good segue.
So Director can give an update.
And say envisioning is not.
So sorry, I was muted. Envisioning is not on the agenda for tonight. So I'm happy to give an update of where we're at, which is.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes.
No.
Yeah, we're doing other, town staff reports. Yes, and I'm sorry. Yes, I was thinking for business. Yes, an update of where we are on envisioning.
Yeah.
Thank you, Miranda.
So we're working on collecting community feedback for Envision. So while you all gave your feedback as it relates to the Planning Commission and your role as commissioners, if you haven't had a chance to do just the town-wide Envision, we would ask you to go onto our website and answer the questions as they relate to the town as a whole. We're working on getting community feedback through the end of October, and our next two events are the Farmers Market, both this Sunday and October 4th. And so we have that public presence, but people can also come by town hall or they can call us and we will complete the Envision questions with them.
So thank you very much. Yeah, I missed that too. So I encourage everybody to go to the website and let's get your personal input put in. I'm certainly I don't know how everybody else feels, but I just been noticing that, and how could you not notice the unbelievable roar of automobiles and motorcycles coming through our town. I don't know what we do in envisioning, but it certainly needs to be discussed. But that's my own personal advertisement there. So is there any other business?
I would only say, considering availability in the November-December timeframe, just something to keep in mind, that we need to figure out a Wednesday meeting somewhere in the November-December-y time that people can meet. I haven't figured out a date yet, but just kind of considering your availability for a meeting at that point, and then we can discuss it more in October.
Okay. Yeah.
This is for the combined
Yeah,
December,
right.
November.
Yes, or whatever. Let's make sure we have that room reserved too.
Yeah, that's very ambitious that we're gonna meet.
Okay.
But,
Is there any other business, staff? Commissioners? Can I get a motion for adjournment?
I'll motion.
So moved.
That was Jim and Steve seconds.
okay, and Jim move. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Anyone against? Anyone opposed? No. Meeting is adjourned at 8:35 p.m.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.